This is Brad A. Milford with the Unlimited Business Wisdom Podcast, where leaders, seasoned entrepreneurs, and business owners share their wisdom. It's straight to the point to respect people's time, and because we know knowledge and wisdom turn to business possibility, and possibility mixed with support and action become reality. In this podcast, we discuss leadership, sales, marketing, operations, team development, quality, and finance to drive sustainable results and everlasting impact to make the world a better place. Thanks for joining us. Hey, Brent, welcome to the show. Great to have you.
Hey, Brad, thrilled to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
Excellent. Would you be willing to, I suspect you will, share with the audience in a few sentences who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I lead a boutique consulting firm called Winalytics, and we call it Revenue Acceleration and go-to-market consulting. We do a lot of work with sales team, but in the current buyer environment, if your sales strategy is not directly connected to your marketing, prospecting, and customer success strategy, you're doing something wrong because you're making it about you rather than about your buyers. So our secret sauce is helping people move from product-driven selling, me, my company, my successes, how great I am, all my product awards, to what we call authentic conversations, which always just comes back to your buyer or customer why. Why are they talking to you? How can you make them more successful? That's the focus. That should be the focus of every buyer and customer conversation. Customer success people take themselves off the hook all the time saying, I don't sell. But even if you're working a customer, they're interested in your product because it helps them accomplish something. So find out what and help them do it better and help them find out what else it connects to. So always come back to your buyers' why, how you can make them more successful.
I love this conversation very much.
Good.
I've looked at your website. Man, this is our first actual meeting, but we've communicated a little bit. I looked at your website, and this is such an important conversation, Brent. So I'm really looking forward to diving in here a little bit more into how you do that and the value in that and all that. It's crazy how we get, I mean, everybody's in this boat, right? So you get slammed with these cold pitches and, all this value stuff they say, like on LinkedIn and on every social media channel. So I'm looking forward to having a little bit more of a conversation around that. A very
Awesome.
needed conversation all around the world, no doubt.
Yeah, no question. I mean, we're all suffering from information overload. So more stuff about you and your product is just more information. What we need to do is translate information into insight. And there's a lot of companies that hear that, or they listen to challenger selling or insight selling, and so they start pitching insights. If you really want to engage with people, ask them questions. And look, you can ask questions in email, right? Are you working on, have you found a pain around, if you're from Torchlight, a company we worked with, or a lot of your employees having caregiver responsibilities. A lot of your women leaders, are they opting out of management roles because they're managing both aging parents and, struggling children, right? Ask questions. Are you working on, or the other thing we say is share peer stories. When we worked with corporate L&D space, hey, when, NovoEdge started to think differently about how they message to the chief revenue officer or the chief human resource officer versus the business unit owners versus the L&D learning and development staff, they found a lot more engagement. How are you personalizing to each person's reason for training investments?
I love it. And I mean that sincerely. I love this. Is so needed on so many levels in so many industry and so many markets. So this is great. We're going to shift gears for a minute and we'll come back to that if that's okay with you, Brent.
Please.
What's the best thing that you find about being in business?
Freedom. Freedom, right? I mean, I'm my own boss. My clients are my boss, and I'm a hyper responsive guy, but at the end of the day, I can work from anywhere and do. I mean, my poor kids, it's like, I was coming home from my son's gig. He's an awesome musician. He's a drummer and a guitarist, and he was singing his first, he's in a Led Zeppelin cover band. That was this season. And so I'm coming home, sitting on the T on Sunday, had a 45-minute T ride because we didn't want to Uber it from out there. I'm working because I got a mobile hotspot on my phone. So I can work from anywhere. I can work from vacation if I want to. So it's the freedom. And also for me, I love what I do and I can pick what I do. Right. So the ability to pick where I focus my time, how I evolve my business to play to the areas that I have passion and strengths. I mean, those are the things that I love about being a business for myself.
Love it.
The financial stress is the harder part, right? Because at the end of the day, you're the tip of the spear for bringing in new deals, right? I mean, we work with early growth companies, and when I see the CEOs starting to kind of hand off, I mean, until you get to 5 or 10 million, starting to hand off, like, oh, I'm going to give somebody else revenue or sales responsibility, big red flag. And I tell them, look, you got to own that for a long, long time. You got to own those dollars because nobody cares as much as you do. Nobody is as invested in you do. So freedom and pressure, it's a balance,
Wow. So that's a really interesting aspect that you put on the tail there. So freedom, of course, we hear that commonly. And I love how you shared what that means to you. And because freedom's a little bit different to everybody. So I love the story about family and how that ties in, and being able to do what you want, kind of when you want, but we know the clients are the boss, right? We get to shift and move within our strengths and passions. Well said, well stated, really appreciate it. The interesting thing in addition to that, though, is what you added there toward the end. Would you be willing to just speak into that a little bit more?
Yeah. It's just, I have been doing this and I was a revenue leader for years, so I know what it means to own the number. Here, I've worked with different senior people and have senior people on the team. And I guess it's even as we think about building inbound or outbound, I'm always hoping there's a gimme. I'm always hoping something will just start doing it, and boom, the leads will just start coming in the door and they're qualified deals. And it just never worked that way.
Right.
Year after year after year, we get better at all this stuff. It's easier to get conversations. Those conversations are more with ideal buyers, but I still find that I need to be climbing the hill and having the energy to climb the hill every week of just pushing your pipeline forward.
I love it. I'm so glad to hear you say that. In as many podcasts as I've done, not too many people have spoke directly into that, but yet you work with clients, I work with clients, and I see that all the time. They want to pass the sales off to someone else. And I'm like, wait a minute, until you hit, and so you said 4 or 5 million, which I appreciate. I usually say, like, until you hit 1 million, you don't even basically know what you're doing. Like, I mean, there's a whole lot to learn, right? In business. And if you haven't run multiple businesses before, if you haven't hit the 1 million mark before, then, and sales is the lifeblood. So you definitely don't want to pass that off because of the reason that you said. I mean, you illustrated great. Nobody's going to care about that as much as you. And so that's a really important topic. So I just appreciate that you just openly shared that and just were frank about it. So thank you. Thank you, Brent.
Well, one other thing to add is, you probably know this, that only 5% of businesses get to 1 million.
That's right.
It's a really hard thing to do. So now, if you actually get to 1 million and you scrape and, claw and, now what you got to do is figure out how to double down on getting smarter about what it is that, what is it? And this is where we are. We've been sort of at that 1 million, run rate for a couple of years, just optimizing our product. And we've now optimized the product. And now it's like, okay, is it Brent getting out to speak at conferences? Is it SEO? Is it inbound? We're going to experiment with all that stuff. What's the repeatable revenue model for us.
Right.
And most people don't, if they get to that point, they don't push to the next point because 95% of businesses stop at $1 million.
Right on. Right on.
So
A fascinating conversation. We're going to shift to question number 3, and then we're going to dive in here a little deeper. So stick with us if you're watching and listening. Not if, when, who. We know you're here. So thank you for listening and watching. Question number 3, Brent. We hear from other businesses they're getting so much business that sometimes the chaos causes some overwhelm. Would you be willing to share your thoughts on that topic?
yeah, I mean, my initial instinct then is if you're getting a lot of leads in business, you got a great opportunity to focus on your ideal buyer. And your ideal buyer is not who will get on the phone with you. It's not who closes. It's who's worth the most money to you.
Nice.
Your lifetime value of those relationships. And so if you're fortunate for that, actually, if you own a business, how long have people been with you? How much have they paid? Figure out your top 10 or 20% of customers. What's different about them? And now start organizing your prospecting and selling around those customers. And boom, you're going to get a lot more profitable with less effort.
So powerful. So powerful. So what I hear in what you're saying is it's not just anybody and everybody that will get on the phone with you. You actually want to focus on the most profitable potential client, most profitable prospect, which there's no way I could agree with you more. That is what you share, correct?
100%. And so people often hear ideal buyer, and that sounds really kind of complicated in your buyer persona and yada, yada, yada. But most of your business owners who know their business, they have the data, right? I mean, they can go reconstruct in some way, like they've been with me 3 years, they paid this much. So just look at those, you think of your ideal buyers, the people that have given you the most money for the longest period of time, and find more of those.
Love it. With billions of people in the world, you're able to find some more, right?
Yes.
I love it. This is great. It's simple, but it's so powerful, and yet so few people do it. So glad you're highlighting that. We'll switch to question number 4. What other successful business owners like yourself, of course, Brent, should be on the Unlimited Wisdom podcast?
Yeah, I think of Mark Miller. He's a colleague here in Boston who I've collaborated with a number of times, and he does kind of small market M&A work, largely in the learning markets. But he is, I do strategy and execution. He's just pure insight. Like he does transactions based on not the financial value, but the strategic value. And so gets owners multiples on the financial value because he's figuring out how to sell a unique asset and then find a market. If 6 people are bidding on that unique asset and there's only one, right? So I've always just enjoyed working with him. He just did it again. I mean, he got a young entrepreneur, a couple of young entrepreneurs who had no business getting a massive payoff from a strategic investor and a massive payoff. They got to take some money out of the company. So he's just a brilliant guy who has been a friend to entrepreneurs and thinks not about the financial numbers, but the strategic opportunity of your business. How have you created a unique asset and to position a unique asset that you might have bigger companies that would get into a bidding war about?
Love it. Love it. That's so powerful. And that can be big business in and of itself. So that's a fascinating topic. Thank you for sharing, Brent.
Yeah, I got to tell just a quick story on that. A buddy of mine started Vault.com. I don't know if you know that. It's a career website. And he was in front of the president of Houghton, I think it was Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, a guy named Hans Gieskes. And Hans offered them some crazy amount of money, 20x multiple in the .com period. I want to say he offered him $40 million on 3 million in revenue or something, or 2 million. And they walked away saying it wasn't rich enough. And then the .com bubble burst, right? And they came back 3 years later after blood, sweat, and toil. And Hans like, yeah, I'll give you 10 million for that business. And they were like ballistic. And Hans was just like, hey, Timing's everything. You should have taken the deal.
Right on. Right on. I love those kinds of stories. I mean, there's so many stories. People almost bought this with Google and that with this. I mean, those stories are just always fascinating. So you got to keep your eye on the market, and it's a beautiful story. Timing really
matters. Timing matters.
Indeed. Positioning, you've talked about already. Timing, you've talked about already. Finances and sales. So we're going to dive in here. Let's get to the crux of this. What piece of wisdom, Brett, would you share with your vast experience of what you see? What piece of wisdom would you share with other business owners?
Yeah, I mean, where we started, if you want to get really good at what you're doing, figure out how to listen for and do discovery on your buyer success statement, your customer success statement. We coach with teams like at the end of the call, could you say in 1 or 2 sentences how you can make them more successful? In their words. Did you actually ask them enough questions? Did you understand? Could you put it in a follow-up email? Because look, we're all wired to product pitch. We're wired to start with a conclusion that somebody's interested in our product and then look for evidence. And unfortunately, sales training over the last 10 years has all been about sellers being in charge, right? Controlling the sale, being in charge. And that's exactly the wrong energy in an information saturated environment. Forrester did a study probably in 2014 saying most executives, 75% will only talk to businesses that understand their business and their business issues. So if you want to build engagement and you want to sell more and you want to expand accounts quicker, just focus on your buyer and customer why. Recap it to them, reconfirm it with them, ask if it's still valid, ask what else that could lead to. Well, I'll just finish and then we go to question 6. There's a team member at a company in industrial automation that worked with us, and he would always just pitch his product list, right? Pumps, valves, filters, etc. And we just said to him, hey, after that first product, just ask a simple question. What else are you working on? What else does that pump connect to? And so he started asking that question in one conversation. I remember 20K pump conversation. Hey, what else are you working on? What does that connect to? Oh, well, it's about reliability, line up times, maintenance, predictive, being able to predict our maintenance. Suddenly a 20K conversation turned into a 200K conversation. What else are you working on? What's working and not working for you around that initiative? What would success look like? No technical questions there. Just, hey, how can I make you more successful? The more you do that, the more successful you will be.
I love it. This topic is a topic that I talk about a lot. And I imagine you do too, all the time. So, I mean, this is your area, this is the area of your focus. It's so simple. Figure out the situation, meet them where they are, serve them, ask lots of questions. But rephrasing what you said at the beginning of the call, questions are the answer. Yet so many people are driving from the product. It's crazy how many times I get pitched on, I won't even mention the social channel names, but just on a social channel, and they're like, you need this or you need that. I'm like, you don't even know me. You don't know what stage of business I'm in. You don't know how much business I'm doing. You didn't even look at my profile to find out exactly what I specialize in. Now, I know sometimes that can be challenging when you do your research like that. Maybe the person's profile doesn't reflect all that clearly. That's one side of things, but it's obvious when somebody doesn't do any research at all whatsoever. And you don't know me at all. How can you assume that I need the product that you're offering? It's really a silly waste of time. When I see it, I'm thinking, wow, your team is wasting an enormous amount of time, even if it's just I don't want to say even if it's an important VA or someone. I don't want to minimize that position. That's an important position, right? So even if it's a VA or something, it's still a waste of time and resources. So would you be willing to share? I know we got to keep it short on this brief podcast, but would you be willing to take that one step deeper based on what you're finding in the market? So one of the things I think is fascinating is when we're focusing on value driven, we're focused on service to the person, right? Getting to know each other and truly determining whether we can help them or whether we're going to refer them to someone else, right? That's part of what I hear you sharing. And then I think one of the challenges with that is, how do you move from cold to warm? So how do you get from cold to warm? So would you be willing to share some of your experience or, some wisdom that you have in that arena?
Yeah, I mean, two things. One is, we mentioned it earlier, peer stories,
Hmm.
right? I don't have to necessarily work with you, but if I'm, again, to go back to the corporate L&D, if I work with a bunch of corporate L&D executives, CHROs, or people in L&D staff, I can share that work and the things that I hear them talking about, and are any of those relevant for you? So I think, thinking about leading with peer stories, or even just what are common outcomes you're seeing or common challenges you're seeing among your peers, is now you're putting yourself in a circle of peers, right? It's not me and you, it's us trying to solve this problem
Nice.
together, I think is one. The other thing we find works, and it's a little bit more labor intensive, but if you go to a conference and you just listen to the talks, or you listen to a podcast and you just little personalization postulate, right? About, hey, I was interested in the talk because, and then, you have to do that more than account-based marketing. You're probably going to take that message to 10 or 12 people, CEO, but then others, hey, I heard your CEO talk about this. I'm imagining that could be affecting your work in these ways. Is that something you're interested in talking about? So I find a lot fewer people consistently post on LinkedIn as for instance, a way of personalizing, but almost all CEOs are on webinars and talking. And so you can capture some snippets from that, which you can then take to their leadership team or to units or whatever. And it's like, okay, you're talking to me, talking to my company. And you can do the same thing if they have good business plans that are easy to digest, right? Or most university campuses have strategic plans. So it's just like, hey, I'm reading this as a priority for you. Is that still a priority for you? How's that affecting, how's the president's priority, how's the CEO's priority affecting your work?
I love what you just shared there. It's actually brilliant. And so I want to highlight it and make sure, paraphrase it, then we'll switch to question number 6. Because what you said, so I'm familiar with it, but somebody watching or listening might not have grasped it in the way that you and I are more familiar with it, right? And it's brilliant because there are people that pay thousands and thousands and thousands of thousands, I kid you not, for marketing research based on what you just shared. So it's finding the snippets of what the people are saying within the company that you're targeting, and then rephrasing them back to them and asking them questions. Or are they interested in those things? It causes a person to say, you're speaking directly to me. Like it causes them to be literally attracted. Now, when we say attraction or magnetic, sometimes it just sounds like marketing language, but it's literally true in this case. When you speak someone's language to them, they say, Brent, you're speaking to me right now. So
exactly
brilliant.
right. Exactly right. Yeah, you nailed it.
It's brilliant. So back to the question, how do you move from cold to warm? That's the answer. You figure out their language and you speak to them in their language, not your language, their language, which is
exactly. And I would just note those two levels, like sharing pure stories. You can do that at scale, right? Because I can pick a set of stories that I know are questions. I could pick 50 companies and 3 contacts. The other one, you can't really do it at scale. You have to be thinking more of, do I have an account-based motion where I could go to 6 or 8 or 10 people with the same message, and therefore it's worth investing in it.
right
So
on.
people should think about that scale. But in both cases, you're speaking in language, their language or their peers' language. So basically they understand it. It's not about you and your product and your company.
So powerful. Thank you so much.
Mm.
So I'm going to shift to the vacation question because I ask every guest about the vacation. But before I do, I've actually found you to be pretty humble in here. You got some amazing things going on, and what you focus on is really important in the market and is very needed. I mean, I'd like to say it's an underserved market, but it's such a wide, broad market. Everybody kind of needs to really get zeroed in to value-driven conversations. It's amazing to me. We're not in the 1970s anymore. Let's face it. I mean, come on, let's move. Let's evolve. Let's move ahead, right? And some people are aware of it. Those who are aware of it are very aware of it, but there's still many people who are not. So you are in an underserved market, believe it or not.
Yeah, no, we're if you think of that crossing the chasm, Jeffrey Moore. I mean, it's been great. I've been doing it this way for 20 years, and I have a non-traditional. We didn't have time to cover that and don't need to, but I've been doing this way for 20 years, and it literally is the last 2 or 3 years that I feel like we're getting to the early majority. You know, it's like 20%. It's not 10 or 12%. It's like people know there's a problem, and we gotta shift. And so the appetite for what we do has grown a lot, even the last 12 to 18 months. But again, we spent a decade with this whole stuff about you're in charge, right? I mean, all these methodologies about micromanaging the steps in the buying process, sellers have been trained in the wrong way for a decade, and we got to unwind some of that.
Agreed. Such an important conversation. So would you be willing to share some projects that you're working on right now, some initiatives, some campaigns that you're running right now, just with the audience? What are you mostly focused on delivering to your clients at the moment so that people know, hey, he's speaking to me right now?
Yeah, I mean, we are, so the two things that we do a lot of work is how do you get your sales and your customer success team shifting from product-driven conversations to authentic conversations? How do you build the skills? How do you build the mindset to increase your deal velocity and honestly your account expansion velocity because you're having better conversations? That's one thing we focus a lot of time on. The other thing we focus a lot of time on is we talk about it as buyer personalization. It's building the right content. Our buyers at the end of the day, if they come to your website, they'd love to see the use case for their role in their sector, right? That's the best hit. They don't want you to, if you're a manufacturing company, you know, professional services isn't that interesting, right? Even if you're both in HR roles. So we are doing a lot of work on buyer personalization. How do you build content funnels or content pathways that really guide from the website into your prospecting cadences, into your calls, slides you're sharing, stories you're sharing. So the more and more you can personalize to what is their goal, what's their role, what sector are they in, the more energy and engagement you're going to get.
Love it. I absolutely love that. Well stated. I congratulate you. Again, very needed in the market. So thank you. Shifting to our last question. I believe you do too, that we work to live, not live to work, right? So you mentioned freedom earlier. Would you be willing to share just the most fun vacation you've ever had, Brent?
Sure, but I'm just going to say my wife might question your premise in my case.
Reasonable enough. Some say
because
fair
I work
enough.
on vacation, although I work a lot less on vacation than when I started this business and was just trying to make sure I was successful. We had an awesome, we try and get my kids abroad every year. It was hard in the pandemic, but just to expose them. We've had a ton of awesome vacations. We were in Colombia and we were in Turks and Caicos and we're in London and France. But the trip that we had to Dublin and Belfast and Edinburgh this March was pretty awesome.
Nice.
Because we had Dublin. I don't know if you've been there recently, but it's like I hadn't been there for decades, but it's like it is the most modern city I've been to. They're so wealthy from the financial sector and foreign direct investment. Like literally there wasn't a road with any potholes in it.
Nice.
But the people were so incredibly nice and gracious, but it was like, wow, to see that level of just suburban affluence. I didn't know there was a country that was kind of like that. And then we went up to Edinburgh where it felt like a blast back to the 12th century. I mean, literally, you look around the skyline and like all of the, I don't even know what the kind of is it Gothic, or I don't know what the architecture, maybe it's Tudor or whatever it is, but every building has some kind of historic story. So that was awesome. And I mentioned my son, spent some time hiking with him. He and I took on a Scottish Highland. It was like literally in a quarter mile, we went up by 1,000 feet. And so just some beautiful, beautiful views, a great hike and some beautiful views. So that was an awesome trip.
Great times. Great times.
Actually, we ended on a working farm with cows and pigs.
Nice. All just full circle, all over the place.
Full circle. Full circle.
And you can work from anywhere while you do it too.
And you can work from anywhere. All you need is a hotspot.
I love it. I love it. You took me back. I mean, being in Europe is amazing. Absolutely amazing. Just for the reasons you said. You're in a farm, you're on a mountain, you're at the ocean, you're in a building that was created in the like 985 or something. I mean, it's amazing. So I love that you enjoyed it. Brent, thanks for sharing. When somebody watches this, and they will, and they listen to this, and they will, and they say, I have to reach out. I need some help in that area. I've got to reach out to this guy. What's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, two things. I mean, they can email me personally or connect on LinkedIn. I'll respond to anybody. So you send me an email, I'll send you an email back, even if I'm not interested. But it's B Keltner at Winalytics, WINALYTICS.com, and that'll probably be in the show notes. But you could also our book website is authenticitywins.com. Bring you right to our book website. And, people, if they're interested, best way to learn about us, order the book from Amazon. Read it. You can download an excerpt for free just to get a feel of some of the things we're talking about right from that book website. So I would encourage those. I mean, download the excerpt. If you're interested, order the book. Reach out to me if you have a question. I'm happy to dialogue. I love to learn about this stuff every day. There's nothing I like to talk about more than go-to-market strategy.
Love it. You and I both, my friend, you and I both. So I love this conversation. Awesome. Thank you very much. And very clear steps. So I want to encourage, if you're listening and watching, do something that's different. Don't just listen and watch. Actually do. So the links will be down below, but do exactly what he recommended. Go download the free excerpt, buy the book, dive in a little bit, then reach out and have a conversation. It will, when you actually take action, it changes everything you do. So I want to encourage you to do so. So thanks for listening and watching. And Brent, thank you for taking a chunk out of your day to be here to provide value for people. So I really appreciate that. And I celebrate you for that. So thank you.
Yeah, no, great questions. You're a great host, Brad. So I appreciate the time. Enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you very much. My pleasure. This is Brad A. Milford with the Unlimited Business Wisdom Podcast, where leaders, seasoned entrepreneurs, and business owners share their wisdom. If you're looking for more on leadership, sales, marketing, or operations to drive team development, higher quality, and high-level sustainable profits, we encourage you to join the Built for Brilliance community on Facebook or reach out to us about one of our mastermind groups, coaching or consulting, or even fractional COO services. You can reach us at buildbrilliance.net/contact. We thank you for listening, for sharing the show, and appreciate your rating and reviews, as this makes more shows possible. Thanks for joining us.